waterlogged. Today we're going to talk about angelfish. There are several different types of angels that you can keep in your tanks, and you can break them down into two main categories. So you're going to have your, I guess you could call them the large angelfish and your dwarf angelfish, but we're going to get started talking about those dwarf angelfish. Now, as their name suggests, they're a good bit smaller in size. So you're gonna have ones like your flame angel, beautiful bright red coloration. A lot of people really love those. You can have a beautiful lemon peel. Again, as the name suggests, it's bright yellow, really, really pretty. You also have your pygmy angel. You have a bicolored angel and a coral beauty. That's actually one of my favorites. I just love the color patterns on there. It's the beautiful purples and reds, and it's just so pretty. When it comes to large angelfish, you can break them down into two more categories, but I'm gonna go over all of them as a whole, and then we'll break them down a little bit further. So first off, these two are not reef safe. That is going to be the flagfin angel and the blue girdled angel. Those guys aren't reef safe, so Fowler tank only. Otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of money on coral that you don't want to spend. Next up, these two are reef safe. This is going to be your Bellis angel and your Lamarck's angel. These two actually are a little bit smaller. If it were up to me, I would categorize them as one of the dwarf angels, but generally in the industry, they're categorized as those large angelfish. Next up is the queen angelfish, the emperor angelfish, and the blueface angelfish. All three of these are reef safe with caution, but again, there's always exceptions to the rule. They might be reef safe and then mow down all of your corals. So, always do your research before you put the fish in the tank. Now, I mentioned that you can break them down further into two more categories. So that first category that we're going to break them down into is sexually dimorphic, which means the males are going to look a little bit different than the females. And you can see that it's very evident in these Bellis angels. The males and the females look a little bit differently. Now, with most of these, typically when you go to your local fish store, a lot of them will be labeled. So if you're not sure, always ask. A lot of them are very, very helpful. The next grouping or category is ones that will change depending on their age. So one of my favorites is the emperor angel. They look totally different as juveniles, and then as they grow older, their pattern and their colors totally change. I can remember a couple years ago at Macna, I saw a guy when he was walking around, the front of his shirt had the juvenile, and then when he turned around had the adult emperor angel, so that was pretty cool. Another one that changes based on age is going to be the queen angelfish. Now that color change isn't as noticeable, but it's still definitely a different color change and a different pattern. Okay, now that we've talked about the different groupings of angels, let's talk about sizes and how much tank space they need. As you can imagine, those dwarf angelfish are going to stay pretty small. They're going to be about 3 to 6 inches in size. So you can get away with maybe a minimum of a 55-gallon tank when they're full adults, 55 to 70-gallon tank for those guys. Now, the large angelfish, with the exception of the Bellis and the Lamarck's, they're going to get substantially bigger, 7 inches to over 1.5 feet in length. So those are pretty big angelfish. You're going to want to make sure you have a lot of space for those. 125-gallon to up to a 220-gallon, if not larger. If you can afford to go bigger, definitely go bigger. The fish will definitely appreciate it. All right, let's head to the kitchen and talk about diet. Now that we're in the kitchen, let's talk about diet for angelfishes, right? So if you didn't know, angelfishes are omnivores, which means they're going to eat meats and they're going to eat vegetables. Before I get into the store-bought foods that you can purchase for angelfish, like wrasses, some angels can be coral eaters, right? So always make sure you do your research before you buy your fish. But I've got some fun ways that you can incorporate corals in your coral-eating fish's diet if you do have them in Fowler tanks, but I'll get to that in a minute. First off, let's start with our dry foods, right? So dry foods are going to be things like your flake foods. They come in a huge variety. You've got your pellet foods as well. Now, something to keep in mind with the pellet foods, and this one is a great example. If you look down here, it's gonna say large pellet. So make sure that you're buying a pellet that is small enough to fit into your fish's mouth. This is particularly something to keep in mind if you've got those dwarf or pygmy angelfish, those little small guys. You don't want to get a large pellet like this. It might not necessarily fit. So next up is going to be our gel foods and our DIY foods. In the past, if you've seen the videos, I've talked about some of the DIY foods like this gel mix. There's also dough mixes out there. These are really great if you have to mix in medication to treat your fish, or if you just want to mix a huge variety and do it yourself. You can add things like nori and maybe some vegetables. You can put them all in here and it's an all-in-one food that you can feed. But another variety of gel foods is things like this mastic. They look kind of like little gummies. You can smush them and put them on rockwork. Now, I mentioned some of those coral eating angelfish. So if you go to your local fish store, you can ask them if anybody's, given them turned in rocks or something. A lot of times they might have dead coral frags for whatever reason that they could sell you. You can take these home and clean them and then use things like mastic and stick it along these pieces of coral, and it will simulate their natural foraging behaviors out in the wild. If they are those coral eaters, this is a great option for fowler tanks. All right, next up is going to be our frozen foods. So you have a huge variety of frozen foods as well. You've got things like your PE mysis. It's a good food for like any fish in your tank, but these small little shrimp in here are going to be great for angelfish. They can go and chase after them as they're floating in the water column. It's a lot of fun for them. Now, another one that is made just for angelfish is this Ocean Nutrition Pygmy Angel formula. You can see it's made specifically for those dwarf angelfish. So if this is all of you, if this is all that you have in your tank is those dwarf angels, go ahead and consider getting one of these. But if you do have a variety of fish in your tank, you can get something like this Reef multi-pack. It's got stuff for a bunch of different types of fish that you might have. Because let's be honest, chances are if you've invested in this stuff, you're not gonna just have one fish, you're probably gonna have a whole bunch, unless you have, say, like a little nano tank or something small that's dedicated to a species. Now, I did mention that they are omnivores, so they're going to eat vegetables as well. So you can always supplement their foods with things like nori. You can get it in a variety of different colors. It's really your personal preference what you want to get. Now, one thing I will recommend, if you're going to use the clips, it works really well, but if you're going to use the, there's a lot of products out there that are like little containers. You can put the food inside pouches. If you're going to do that, make sure that the whole space on them is large enough for those angels to get their mouth in. Unlike tangs, angels have a short, blunt little nose and a mouth. It's not as long as those tangs, so you don't want them scraping their nose and their mouth as they're trying to get to the food. So you can kind of see it's got larger holes, a lot easier for them to get to. That wraps up all that we're going to talk about with respect to diet, but let's go discuss some of the issues that your angelfish could possibly encounter. Okay, so with any fish that you get, they're probably going to encounter at least some sort of health issues throughout their life, and angelfish are no different. So let's go over a few of the common things that, at least in my experience, angels are known for. As with any fish, a cryptocarian is always something that you are likely to battle, especially if there is stress. So something that you can use for that, First Defense, is a great product. It's by Dr. Tim's. Actually, one of you asked me about this last time. Highly recommend it if you're adding new fish, if your fish are stressed. This is something great that you can add to any tank. Quick Cure is also another one that you can use. It treats a variety of different issues, but the one thing with angelfish, in my experience, that I saw a whole lot of are flukes, which can be dealt with using a freshwater dip or a freshwater bath. Now, if you don't feel comfortable using a freshwater bath, if you've never done it before, it can be very intimidating. There is a great product out there. It is called a Safety Stop. It's made by Blue Life. Absolutely fantastic. So if you get this, you flip it on the back. It's very specific instructions that you have to follow. It does take a little bit of time, but it's really good if you don't, like I said, feel comfortable doing those freshwater baths, or if you don't have a lot of time to quarantine. This is supposed to be very, very helpful for getting rid of those flukes. Another thing that I've encountered a lot with angelfish is urinema. If you've never seen urinema before, it almost kind of looks like bruising underneath the scales. Sometimes, if you don't catch it soon enough, it can look like a big ulcer on the side of the fish. And if you catch it fast enough, or if you use the Safety Stop when you first get your fish, it can always help to reduce the risk of getting that. Or I've actually used Safety Stop on a fish before and helped to stop urinema in its progress. So those are just a few things that you can use that are for the common problems that angelfish encounter, but nothing is a substitute. Make sure you're always monitoring your water, doing your water testing and water changes as needed. Now, something else you can do to make sure that your fish have good, healthy lives are offer them enrichment. I know you guys probably think I'm crazy, but I do want your fish to live their best life, and enrichment is a great way to do that. We talked about this a little bit when we were in the kitchen with the different types of diet and foods that we use, but you can use things like these clips. It offers a way for you to put nori in here or other foods. It offers that chance for those fish to graze like they normally would. You can use things like that mastic gel and put it in the rockwork or in dead corals if you might have them. For those fish that aren't reef safe, that do like to munch on corals, that is a great alternative. Something else that you can also use, and you might not have used it with your saltwater tank, but if you ever started out in freshwater, you might have seen those little vacation feeders. Those are basically, in the public aquarium industry, we call them like dental blocks, and it's great for fish like puffers and angelfish that like to pick and nip at stuff. Those are great forms of enrichment for them. Something else you can use, you can always change up the tank decorations, you can add different flow patterns. Angels aren't as skittish as, say, wrasses, so you can always change up their lighting patterns. If you have one of those programmable lights, you can throw in maybe a thunderstorm or program a sunrise and sunset for them. That is a good way to add enrichment to their lives. Now, I'm curious, if you have an angelfish at home, leave a comment below and let me know what you have done to enrich their lives. If there's anything cool that I haven't mentioned, I'm definitely curious to know. All right. Another way of enriching those fish's lives is with tank mates, right? So as always, you can go online to Marine Depot or you can check out the fish compatibility chart. All you gotta do is look for the fish that you want to add to your tank and see how well it will get along with angelfish. Now, a rule of thumb that I've learned over the years is that you can mix the dwarf angelfish and the large angelfish relatively easy without any problems, but you don't want to mix dwarf angelfishes with other dwarf angelfish. A lot of times they will get very aggressive and territorial and fight, and you don't want that. So other things to keep in mind, especially with these larger angelfishes, is that they, I mentioned before, are pickers, right? So a funny story, I had temporarily adopted a baby stingray because it was kept with a queen angelfish, and the queen angel saw that little stingray's eyes popping out on the top of its head and went right after them. So definitely don't put any angelfish in with stingrays or sharks because they will go after those eyes, and it's just not going to end up good for anyone. All right, that pretty much wraps up everything I have to talk about angelfish. I'm curious if you've ever kept an angel or if you'd love to keep an angel. Let me know what your thoughts on them are and your experiences. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.